Weird Science, Calvin Coolidge, and PT-109 are all on this day. Welcome back to On This Day. Today's date is August 2nd, 2022. It is the 214th day of the year. There are 151 days left in 2022. It is the 31st Tuesday in the 32nd week and the 43rd day of summer. And if it's your birthday, you're still a Leo. Today is National Coloring Book Day. Yes, National Coloring Book Day on August 2nd recognizes the joy children and adults alike derive from coloring in pages of designs. Interesting fact about this, I used to work at the Netflix call center, and I worked the graveyard shift. And a lot of the women, actually a lot of the men, would have coloring books out, and they'd color between calls or while they were on calls just to keep their mind busy instead of staring at a computer screen all day. Coloring and coloring books have always been popular with children, but over the years, adults have gotten more and more involved with coloring. Obviously, adult coloring books are now a huge trend. Many find that it's not only fun, but it's a great way to reduce stress. Dover Publications created National Coloring Book Day in 2015. Founded in 1941, Dover released the first coloring book for adults, Antique Automobiles Coloring Book, in 1970. Dover now publishes Creative Havens, a popular line of coloring books specifically designed for adult colorists. I didn't know you had a term, colorists. A colorist to me is a guy that works on film, but I guess it's coloring book person. All right, let's see what else August 2nd has given us. 1610, during Henry Hudson's search for the Northwest Passage, he sails into what is now known as Hudson Bay. 1776, the signing of the United States Declaration of Independence takes place. 1873, the Clay Street Hill Railroad begins operating the first cable car in San Francisco's famous cable car system. 1923, Vice President Calvin Coolidge becomes U.S. President upon the death of President Warren G. Harding. So, not a lot of people know about Warren G. Harding. He's actually known as the Forgotten President, and really, back in the day when he was in office, in the early 20s, people didn't really like him. So, 100 years ago, a president was going through what most presidents go through right now. Nobody ever seems to like them. His presidency lasted a little over 2 years when he died of a cerebral hemorrhage on August 2nd, 1923. At 2 a.m. the following day, August 3rd, Calvin Coolidge was sworn in as the President of the United States. Technically, he became the president as soon as Warren G. Harding died, but he was actually sworn in at 2 in the morning on August 3rd, which it is said promptly afterwards he went back to sleep. Most people become the president, out of nowhere. They usually got a little adrenaline going and they can't sleep. Not Calvin Coolidge. That dude liked to sleep. The country did a complete 180 with Calvin Coolidge. The first thing was they really liked him. Even though he was known as Silent Cal because he really didn't talk much, the country liked him, and he kind of was the president for the Roaring 20s when the economy just went through the roof. The Charleston was way overdone. It was a good time to be an American. And if you're wondering why Calvin Coolidge was so popular, he slashed regulations, he slashed taxes, and he very much made it where the federal government wasn't in everyone's business all the time. Calvin Coolidge finished out Warren G. Harding's 2 years, and then he won a re-election. He decided not to go for a third term, which he could have done, because this is back before a president could only serve 2 terms. He got out just in time because the stock market crashed in 1929, and he didn't have to sit through that. 1943, World War II, motor torpedo boat PT-109 is rammed by a Japanese destroyer and sinks. Lieutenant John F. Kennedy, the future president of the United States, saves all but 2 of his crew. Very interesting story. Around 2 a.m. on August 2nd, 1943, PT-109 was doing a patrol near the Solomon Islands. The night was cloudy and moonless, and fog had kind of rolled in. PT-109 was kind of just idling on one engine and barely moving, so they wouldn't be detected by Japanese destroyers in the area. Well, a Japanese destroyer without running lights or anything like that, it was just plowing through the channel, and PT-109 didn't have time to react. It was moving too slow, they couldn't maneuver good enough, so they got split in 2. When the PT boat eventually exploded, 2 of the crew members were killed, and the rest kind of swam their way to some remote islands. Out in this area, there's a bunch of little tiny islands. They got to one of them, then they went to another one to try and get help. But eventually, a sub-lieutenant named Reg Evans got the word out about the explosion and the missing crew to local coast watchers, which were local fishermen and stuff like that were working with the Allies. 2 men had seen the explosion a few days earlier and thought they'd go investigate once they got the radio traffic that the crew was missing. 2 local men named Gasa and Kumana, that's their whole name, actually are attributed for saving the rest of the crew. When John F. Kennedy was elected president, they were sent invitations and all the expenses were going to be taken care of for them to come to his inauguration. They never made it because local officials decided they should go instead. I think that's kind of screwed up. Casa died in August of 2005 and Kumana died on August 2nd, 2014, 71 years after the PT-109 collision with the destroyer. He was 93 years old. 1944, World War II, the largest trade convoy of the world wars arrived safely in the western approaches. Movies released on August 2nd, 1985, Weird Science, such a great movie. It is a John Hughes film, which I've talked about him extensively on this channel. He's one of the greatest writers and directors of my generation, in my opinion. He wrote so many good movies back then. Oh my God. Anyway, two high school nerds attempt to create the perfect woman, but find out she is much more than they can handle. Had Kelly LeBrock in there. It was actually a cute movie. This movie had some big stars. Anthony Michael Hall was in there, Kelly LeBrock, Bill Paxton, Robert Downey Jr., Vernon Wells, who if you don't know who he is, he always plays like one of those Mad Max wasteland biker dudes. He's got a mohawk. He's an older gentleman now, but back in the day, he was pretty scary looking. I also had these two girls that played the girlfriends, Robert Downey Jr. and this other guy, Judy Arneson and Susan Snyder. They're still friends. I saw a picture of them a couple years ago. One of them put up on their Twitter or something like that. All these years later, they're still friends. I think that's great. People usually don't stay friends in Hollywood. Born on August 2nd, 1970, Kevin Smith, director and producer of the iconic Slackers hits Clerks, Mallrats, Chasing Amy, Dogma, and Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. I love his movies, especially when you know the story about Clerks. It was basically made on a credit card, got maxed out, they borrowed a bunch of equipment, and all the actors pretty much did it for free. It's filmed in black and white, and it just kind of has this, I don't know, it's just a great movie. The story and the dialogue are what makes this movie. If you've never seen Clerks, watch it, have a little patience with it, and you'll see the beauty of it. As he got better or bigger, he started making movies with bigger budgets and stuff like that, but they were still the same thing. They just had better camera work and paid actors. I love his movies. All the filming for the movie Clerks, it was made in a convenience store where he worked. After they closed for the day, they'd film at night. Died on August 2nd, 1876, Wild Bill Hickok, Western sheriff who brought law and order to Kansas towns and went on many adventures. He also spied for the Union Army and gained fame as an actor after the war. He learned to handle a pistol as a youth and was a steady shot despite his age. He was killed while playing poker, and his last hand became known as the dead man's hand. Basically aces and eights, and they have to be black like spades and clubs. He married Agnes Thatcher Lake in March of 1876, but promptly left a few months later to pursue his fortune in South Dakota. He never came back. All right, that's today's video. One thing I want to tell you guys, if you want to help out the channel, there's some videos being suggested right now. If you click on one of those, that's a metric YouTube's really looking at. So if you got time, please do. If not, that's okay also. Everybody have a great day. Be nice to each other.